Hi, Dr. Michelle here with another secret of life and death. Love is in the air. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day, right? So I'm talking about love again and asking you if you're willing to give love another chance. All I'm saying is give love a chance. If you have been abandoned, if you have been betrayed, if you have lost the love of your life, that might be a tall order. Hi, Jerry. Thanks for joining. Loving again after loss is probably one of the most difficult things. I know, I've been there. In fact, I led a hospice partner loss support group for over 5 years. I know how difficult it is to give love another chance. You just can't imagine replacing the person that was your heart's desire, that filled your life. In fact, sometimes you don't even want to live life anymore because you can't imagine living without that person. So what am I talking about? Love again. And yet, love is what we are. We're beings that need to experience love, both on a soul level, but also on a physical level. We are wired to bond. So it makes it difficult, right? Spring is in the air. All right, maybe not so much in New York, but in California, it's getting warmer. The light is getting greater. And tomorrow's Valentine's Day, and you start to say, well, I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of being lonely. I'm tired of doing this all by myself. I think maybe I would like to bring somebody else into my life. If that's you, then listen up. I've got some more information for you. First of all, let's look at some of the resistance. I'm too old. Well, you got to check out some of my posts on my Facebook page because I've been putting some posts out there about seniors who are doing amazing things into their 80s and 90s. And I just turned 70, and I don't think I'm too old for love. Well, you may say, oh, well, but you have a partner. But I did start over again when I was almost 50. So I understand how difficult that is. And yet, truly, I believe that if I had to do it again, I would do it again. Because I believe that partnerships, at least for me, is one of my spiritual practices. It's one of the activities, it's one of the relationships that helps me to grow. So I invite you to do the same thing. So why bother? Well, remember I said that we were also wired to bond. So one of the things that shows up, one of the difficulties that happens is that this body really wants to connect with other people. It wants to feel loved. It wants sex. It's in the system. And I'm telling you, I really tried not to be involved in that. I joined a spiritual group in which relationships were not even really encouraged. And when you would be in those high states, you didn't even think about romance. Well, except that I still did, because there were those bodily urges. The problem with the guys that I met at Sufi camp was none of them were really interested in a long-term relationship, which at first was okay because I was only interested in doing the spiritual work. But what I realized was that actually I had sublimated all my needs for a relationship into the relationship with my teacher. And he was giving me no ground. He put me through a lot of stuff to help me wake up. So I am very grateful to him for that. But back to you. I mean, you don't want to just hear about me. So I get it. you don't want to do it again, but the body urges. But you say, well, I don't want to be hurt again. Suppose, hi, thank you for joining. Suppose this person that I get involved with dies. And I've certainly experienced that, not personally, but I had a person in my support group, partner support group, who had literally gone through 2 husbands and had cared for both of them. Well, I'm going to say a little more about healing yourself before you go out again, so that you don't attract the same kind of people. She had a dynamic there where she had to be the caregiver. You don't have to. That is not necessarily a given in a relationship. But if it's your model, if it's your pattern, you might attract that again. Oh, I wonder what that means. Right. Now I remember. You lose your edge when you are not engaged in a relationship. You are not pushed in the way that you are in a relationship to clean up your act, to grow, to develop. And as I said, relationships can be a spiritual practice, a personal growth practice. That is, if you work on them. Like Woody Allen said, if the relationship doesn't keep moving, it's like a shark, it'll drown. So you have to keep on working. But that's the cool thing about relationships, is that there's always that dynamic, always that encouragement to improve and to change and to adapt. So here's the most important thing. Your purpose. When you work on yourself to live fully and authentically, when you live your purpose, you actually become attractive to the opposite sex, or the opposite, the love partner of your choice. You actually become more attractive. When you can step into your purpose and you heal all the barriers to that, then you attract the right people. Getting a little more interested in doing this? So one more thing, I wanted to talk about the tired of being alone. I certainly was there, although for a long time I found the spiritual work helped. But there were those springtime afternoons out in the park where I would think, oh man, I feel really alone. And I go home and meditate. I have a client who lost the love of her life. And I have to say that what we tend to do when we've lost them to death is we kind of enshrine them. We see them as bigger than life. And we forget all the difficulties. So if you are going to engage in love again, the first thing I would suggest you do is ask permission. This was the big holdup in my partner loss support group, is that the people who were in my group didn't feel like it was the right thing to go out and love again. I mean, after all, the person that they adored died. How could they enjoy themselves with that person being dead? So you might want to reach out to your deceased partner. Now, if your partner left you, that's another story. You do not need permission. But if you've lost a soul partner to death, you might want to write them a letter. Listen inside and see what they have to say. It's one of the practices that I encourage my clients to do when they're getting ready to love again. When they're getting, in fact, just getting over grief. It's a very, very powerful practice. So the first thing is permission. The second thing is that you want to set your intentions. You really need to look at your past relationships and with a very discerning eye, ask yourself what was right and what was wrong. And then go ahead and write down what it is that you want to attract into your life. In fact, that is exactly what I did when I was ready for love again. Now, I have to say that over the course of those 13 years of being a Sufi teacher, not a Sufi teacher, a Sufi student, I cheated many times. I got involved with guys many, many times. And most of them were emotionally damaged and not able to commit. And I got my heart torn open again and again. And then finally, after my own Sufi teacher tore my heart open by not letting me dance, I decided that it was time, that I was ready. And I wrote down what I wanted, very specifically, what I wanted in a partner. And then I put it away. And I made the commitment that I would not get involved unless that person met those requirements. Hey, I was happy to stay in the spiritual community and just keep on doing that until time immemorial, until hell froze over. I was good. Interestingly enough, my current husband showed up 2 weeks later. You could have knocked me over with a feather. But here's step number 3. You need to take action. I have some people who have showed up in my groups and said, well, I'm open for love if he happens to show up. Well, you don't hold your breath. First of all, the people who will show up will often be the wrong people. The people who are there trying to get your help and have you take care of them and have you give all of your love and all of your energy and suck you dry. If you want the right person, you not only have to set the intention, you have to reach out. You have to make yourself available. You have to be visible. And that's exactly what I did. I saw my husband-to-be walk in through the kitchen door at the retreat, and I said, wow, you're a sight for sore eyes. And then I made a few additional, now I did not overwhelm him, but I made slight moves that let him know that I was interested. And then the relationship evolved. Now here's one of the things that I made a mistake about. And this is the 4th thing that you need, and that's healing. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. What happens and what we bring into relationships and why we keep on failing over and over again. So I met the real love of my life, and I'm telling you, after my first husband, I thought he could never be replaced. And yet, I actually found a guy who was even better. Wow. I realized very soon after we started getting together, after we started dating and spending time, that if I did not deal with my emotional wounds, with my issues around abandonment, and I had abandonment issues because as a 2-year-old, my father was transferred to Japan and the close bonding that we had was broken and never restored. And as I've said on some of my other videos, children between the ages of 0 and 3 to 5 are extremely vulnerable. And what seems like little small traumas or small difficulties are hugely traumatic for the child. And that's what happened to me. I have a client who had got pneumonia when she was under 2 and was put in an isolation unit for a few days. And to this day, she struggles with fear of abandonment, fear of being alone. It's a powerful, powerful experience. And you need to do the work, the emotional work, to release the emotions, to release the trauma. And there are plenty of things that you can do to do that, but you need to do it, because if you don't, it's going to come up. So I realized that if I didn't deal with my abandonment issues, I was going to have problems with this new partner, this new relationship. So I did it. I got involved in a very deep healing process for early childhood emotional wounds. And I'm happy to report that my husband and I have been together for 22 years. So it works. Although I have to tell you, it's not all peaches and cream. Relationships are a work in progress. You have to keep working. As Woody Allen says, they're like sharks. You have to keep moving or you drown. So the healing. So what was the problem? I told you one problem, which was that I was abandoned. So abandonment is one of the issues. Abuse is another one. If you've been abused, whether verbally abused, sexually abused, or physically abused, it's very hard to trust the other person. But trust is essential. Trust is essential to having a viable, alive, vibrant relationship. Because it's only when you trust that you allow yourself to be your true self. So here are some of the patterns that I have found as a psychosocial analyst, as a hospice support facilitator for over 6 years, for working with people around grief and loss. These are the patterns that come up over and over again. So the first pattern is pleasing. And when you're in that pleasing pattern, you're sending your energy out into the world, hoping that you're going to get love back. The trick is that you actually need to love yourself first. Oh, I know. How many times have you heard that? But it's true. You have to shift the focus. And I have to tell you, most of the people out in the world are all out there trying to get something from outside in the world and bring it back so that they feel better. You're not alone. So there's the pleaser who goes out and tries to figure out, and there's some really great gifts with this pleaser, because I know I was a pleaser. You figure out what the other person wants and you give it to them in the hopes that they will give you what you need back. Now, generally what I find is that you collect a whole lot of people who know you're a pleaser and manipulate you to get you kind of like a golden goose to give away your eggs. And they, just tickle you a little bit and you give more and more and more until you're exhausted because they do not give anything in return. So you don't want that. Then there's the perfecter. This is the person who is always doing new self-help work, or they're taking more classes in order to make themselves good enough. So if I just do this, then I will be lovable. Well, I've been there and I've done that, and I got to tell you, I am here to help you get results once and for all, to stop that pattern of trying to perfect yourself. The buck stops here. If you want to talk to me, there's a link over in the comments section. Go ahead and schedule a 15-minute talk with me, and let's talk about what your issues are and how I can help you. Stop the pattern of trying to improve and improve and improve. This is my specialty, is to enable you to heal those underlying patterns so that you don't have to keep on going out to psychotherapists or to get more law of attraction trainings or tapping or mindset work, but to really get it healed once and for all. So we've got the pleaser, we've got the pleaser, we've got the perfecter, we have the performer. This is a person who may be very, very successful in work and bring home the bacon, but be so obsessed with always accomplishing that there's no time for love. And worst of all, there is no time for self-care. It's a package. You want all three. You want love, you want success, and you want your health. You lose any of those and you're out of balance. And that's the makeover that I give my clients. A makeover that enables them to get all three of those things going because they're living according to their brilliance. And so much of the ill health and I know this because I've been trained in psychosomatics and I've worked in nutrition, what I have found is a lot of the eating and eating disorders, some of it comes from misinformation, but a lot of it comes from feeling not good enough. It's here's another pattern, the self-soother. And I have to tell you that there's nothing quite like food. Hi, thank you for joining. We're talking about giving love a chance again. And I'm talking about some of the patterns that get in the way of having a successful love relationship. It also gets in the way of a lot of other things, but when it comes to love, it can backfire. So I was talking about the self-soother. Generally, these people are not engaged in looking for relationships because they have found that either drinking or drugs or eating or games or workaholism is satisfying enough. Or at least it distracts you from realizing that something is missing. I invite you to try fasting from those self-soothing activities and find out what shows up. Because what you are tamping down is what is actually going to make you sick. It's going to affect your health in the long run. Because when we tamp down our emotions, and that's why we do all those other self-soothing activities, I like to share this statistic. 1 out of 6 Americans are on some kind of psychiatric drug, primarily tranquilizers and antidepressants. Why? Because they have not healed those emotional wounds and they are afraid to allow that rabbit out of the hat. And so they keep it down in the hat, covered up so that it doesn't pop out like a jack-in-the-box. But it's still operating in your body. It's eating up your health and it's eating up your life. And it actually causes you to age because the chemicals around that holding actually cause you to age. Not to mention all the thoughts and beliefs that go along with it that also help you to age. And you start to say things like, well, I'm too old. Whew, let go of that one. So I've talked about the pleaser, the perfecter, the performer, and the self-soother. There's the controller. And the controller comes from a chaotic or dangerous family situation. Maybe they were sexually abused. Maybe they were emotionally abused. Maybe they were physically abused. The child does not feel safe. And they are certainly not going to try, well, they might try pleasing, but if the pleasing doesn't work, then they are going to try to control the situation. And they may control it by escaping. That is, staying away from home as much as they can and moving out of home as soon as they can. Or if you're a guy, you might actually someday beat up your dad or protect your mom. Or you may take control of the situation if your parents are not showing up. If they're not taking care of you appropriately. There was a very famous psychologist who grew up in a family in which his parents did not take care of him and his brother. And he actually had to learn how to bring food home and take care of the bills so that he could and his brother could survive. And it actually affected his psychological therapy because he basically detached from his feelings. Well, you can imagine what that's like, for you not to be important enough for your parents to care for you. And I had a little bit of that myself, and I have certainly run into that many times with my clients where their parents, through no fault of their own, this is like a repetition over and over again of their generation and the generation before and how their parents treated them. So I'm not in here to bash your parents, but to be realistic and recognize that there may be some work that needs to be done. So the final pattern is the rebel. This is one of the saddest ones of all, because in the other two, in fact, all the other three, it's almost like you've figured out something that works. With the rebel, nothing works. Nothing works. No matter how hard you try and please, no matter how hard you try and control, you try and self-soothe, it doesn't work. And so what this child does is she or he rebels. She goes against the grain. She becomes the worst nightmare of the parent to prove, okay, you don't like me, you don't love me, I'm not good enough. Well, I'm going to deserve that instead of you just doing it by chance. I had a client who, through no fault of her own, was the daughter of a one-night stand. And so her mother always associated her with the jerk, the creep who left her pregnant and never stepped up to help take care of the situation. And actually, she was also told that her mother had tried to abort her, but an accident happened on the way to the abortionist, and she changed her mind. So you can imagine what that might have done to that child in terms of her feeling like she belonged, how it affected her self-esteem, how it affected her self-worth. That she, no matter what she did, she was always going to remind her mother of that jerk. So then what happens is the rebel, somebody who goes against the grain, who doesn't fit in, who never feels like they fit in. Hi, thanks for joining. So we're talking about love, and thank you. And we're just finishing up on talking about the patterns that can happen from early childhood wounds and why you need to take care of these patterns before you get engaged in a relationship again, because they will crop up and they will impact your success in your new love relationship. That's why I invite you to do a whole life makeover. You lost the love of your life, he's died, there's probably things that were wrong about it, and you want to work on that. You want to invite the person in that's really going to work for you, and you also want to do the healing that will enable you to keep the boundaries, to ask for what you need, to get the love that you deserve. So I'm going to just finish this up with just a few more things. I invite you, if you have any of these patterns, to get some help. It's very hard to do this alone. In fact, pretty much impossible. Partly because there is an inner child in there who is scared out of her wits or his wits about changing and has gotten used to and survived with the pattern that you developed in childhood. And so changing that can feel very traumatic. So you want somebody in your corner, and you want somebody there who's going to tell you exactly what kinds of things you need to do to develop the mental, emotional, and heart muscle to be truly yourself, to be authentic, to love yourself, and to be able to have the confidence to go out in the world and to attract the person that you really deserve in your life. So that's number one. Number two, if you're depending upon your community, my experience is that as you start to change, you're going to ruffle some feathers because people are used to you the way you are right now. And when you start to change, I have experienced this myself, you tend to overdo it because you're expecting to get slammed, and so you say it in a way that slams you, the way you say it, or you set your boundaries in ways that do ruffle feathers. So you need some help and guidance with this. Number three, subtle nuances. You're not going to pick this up. You're not going to realize how subtle these behaviors are of not asking for what you want, for not standing up for yourself, for being a people pleaser. I mean, it's so automatic. And here's the other thing about the people pleaser is that you actually get a hit, a chemical hit in your body from being a people pleaser. You actually feel good. So when you want to start changing that behavior, maybe you are a coach or healer and you've been pleasing people and you want to stop that behavior, you're going to get some pushback. And you're going to feel, you're also going to like have a dopamine withdrawal symptoms, and you're going to have to struggle with some feeling bad. And that's what a good coach is for. And I'm saying a good coach. Don't mess around with these programs where it's all online and you don't get time. You need private time with a good coach. That's when you're really going to get the changes. So you need support because you're going to have resistance. You're going to want to go back to your old patterns. They are wired into your brain. Whatever you repeat gets stronger. So in order to change, you actually have to change your behavior. You have to take new action, and that can be scary. So tomorrow is Valentine's Day. What have you got planned? What are you going to do? What new action are you going to take? Are you going to spend time with yourself and make a list of who you would like in your life? Are you going to set your intentions? And I hope, thank you for joining, and I hope that you actually spend some loving time with yourself. If you're alone, if you're recovering from the loss of a loved one, or been rejected, or been dumped, care for yourself. Be loving to yourself. And if you would like to top it off with a conversation with me, go ahead and click on the link in the comments section or send me a message in Messenger, and let's set up a 15-minute call. That's what I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and be brilliant. Bye for now.